the thing that people miss about Trump and those Trump rallies, it's a dark joy, but there's a joy there. It's a church revival. Yeah. And like the left needs to find its own sort of spiritual belonging in all of this, some sort of catharsis and joy. And, you know, I think that that's got to power it as much as the anger and the discontent and the rage.
All right, we are back. She's a senior political analyst at MSNBC. She's been hosting a limited MSNBC podcast series called Trumpland with Alex Wagner. It's Alex Wagner. What's up, girl?
What's up, guy? Thanks for having me on the pod again.
What's up, guy? Yeah, so this what happened, basically. You're in Hungary. We had you're doing the camera folks of the circus crew. You know,
yeah,
what we worked
with,
right?
I don't go anywhere without them. They're the best in the biz. We call this dark circus. Dark circus.
Well, I love the dark circus crew. Obviously, I follow them on social media, and so I was seeing the behind the scenes. And I'm like, you know, I have a daily podcast. I think I should probably know what's happening in Hungary. I didn't really even realize these protests were happening.
Yeah,
and I didn't. And then I Googled it. And like, there hasn't been a bunch of news. There's a month ago, there was a little spate of news about this, but there just hasn't been a lot of discussion about it in the international news. And so you're back. You have the last episode.
I went to one
out.
of the protests. That's where we literally got off the plane and went to these Tuesday protests they've been having every week to protest Orbán's crackdown on Pride, but really it's sort of framed in the broader context of his attack on democracy, civil liberties, the freedom of assembly. And it's really amazing. I got to say, like, I think in the US, we're a little bit like, we have kind of a high bar for what protests sort of like stop us in our tracks. But Hungary does not have a culture of civil unrest. It is a very big deal that people are coming out and amassing and, you know, under threat of government crackdown. Orbán said he will use facial recognition technology to prosecute people who are seen at these protests. And it was like absolutely exhilarating. But sorry, you probably had a question.
No. Well, that's a good start. So that's where that's where my question was going to be, because like there was this kind of crackdown, I guess, around Hungary banning the pride events, and that was maybe like a month ago. So I was like, are these protests still the same? Is it a spinoff? But it is related to the pride crackdown.
It is. I mean, I will say, I talked to one of the leaders of the opposition movement. His name is Marton Tompos, and he was like, you know, this is about pride. This is, of course, about the LGBTQ plus community, but it's also, you know, this is about standing up against Orbán. And it's happening at a time when Orbán is weak. I think people haven't really focused. I mean, we've been focusing on our own little autocracy here in the United States, right? But there's so many similar parallels between Trump and Orbán, not just in terms of policy, the focus on, you know, marginalized communities, immigrants, the media, the courts, but in terms of posture, the obsession on the part of the far right wing with Orbán. He's a regular at CPAC conferences. Trump very much fashions himself in terms of Orbán, and you know, being a strong man, but he's politically weak because he's steered Hungary's economy into the dumpster. You know, like it has. I think, yeah, exactly. And there's a challenger in the wings. His name is Peter Magyar, and he's kind of he's a wild man. He's not a progressive, but he has been really speaking out about corruption. He's been putting in a lot of time speaking across Hungary.
He's kind of a traditionally handsome man.
He is a traditionally handsome man. He is a traditionally handsome man. I think that's not hurt his case. No. But I think part of the reason people feel emboldened enough to do what they're doing, to come out every Tuesday, is because they think this could be the turning point. They think the 2026 elections could be where Orbán is ousted finally. I mean, he's been in power for 15 years, Tim, and he has transformed that country. He has consolidated the media landscape. He has attacked civil liberties. I mean, it is stunning what he has done. And I think part of the reason we wanted to go over there is because I think America can learn a lot about its near future by looking at Hungary and its recent past.
Yeah. And here's the thing that struck me, you know, kind of just watching the social media clips. I look forward to the full pod later this week, but like, it is just, they're doing this every Tuesday. And it is, you know, to me, there's a parallel with the kind of immigration question here, where it's like, you know, gay pride is probably not the issue that is going to galvanize the broadest swath of people in Hungary, of Hungarians, right?
Well, yeah.
And there's nobody over there that's like, oh, well, is this a politically potent,
Wait,
or shouldn't we be focused on kitchen table issues, or are they focused on, or was that
I actually think that's the thing. I was talking to Marta Pardavi, who is an amazing civil liberties lawyer. And she said, actually in 2015, Orbán was really successfully able to scapegoat the migrant population, the European refugee crisis. She said, we thought because Hungary has this history of being a place for refugees and immigrants that there would be more pushback, but there wasn't. He was really successfully able, in similar ways to Donald Trump, right? Yeah. But the pride thing, because I think the opposition movement has learned something in the interim, they framed it not just as an attack on that community, but as this bigger question of can we have protests? Can we speak out? We are under threat of prosecution for just being here. Because Orbán has been so punitive in his attack here, they see this as a much bigger affront to basic tenets of democracy that Hungary purportedly stands for. And so in a way, surprising, I think both of us, pride has become more of a galvanizing issue, in part because they don't think of it just as pride. They think of it as the sort of seminal attack on basic tenets of freedom. So, there's something to learn there, I think, in the U.S. as well, right? How do we frame these issues so that it doesn't feel like, the libs are too woke, but it's no, an attack on one is an attack on all.
Yeah. And I guess that's what I was kind of getting at. Is you can kind of see that in the immigration thing. I think you could imagine a way here that the attacks on, the sending people to El Salvador is less about, we want open borders. It's more about, do you really want Donald Trump disappearing people off the streets?
Over and over again, that has to be the line. It has to be a broader context. And Martin Tomposh, that opposition player that I spoke to, was the Democrats have made this stuff too narrow and too siloed. It needs to be bigger. It needs to be something that people feel brought into, even if they have no particular stake in the fight.
What about any other lessons from them about not getting beaten down? To your point, it's been 15 years. And it was such a... And Hungary is really like a boiling frog, even more so than we are, kind of, because Trump was like Kool-Aid man coming through the wall, whereas Orbán initially positioned himself kind of as a Bush style, center,
and he used to be a liberal,
right European kind of typical leader initially, right?
I gotta say, and I'm obviously I'm a little bit biased in terms of my interests, but the way Orbán consolidated the media and cracked down on the Fourth Estate is first of all, he was so successful, right? He basically had his friends and allies buy up all the newspapers, all the media outlets, all the editorial outlets that were once, real robust journalistic endeavors. Like the New York Times of Hungary was purchased and then shut down within a several week period. But there is a real robust independent media landscape in Hungary. And these guys are reporting on real shit. They're reporting about corruption. They're doing exposés on the son-in-law, Orbán's son-in-law, who, the son-in-law thing is a thing that's universal, I guess.
Owns some hotels, is that right? That
exactly, hotel and tourism industry. And they're doing it and they're so tenacious. And I said, just do you ever wonder why you're still doing this, given how much money the state funnels into state propaganda in the form of these news outlets, the steel, what is the metaphor? The iron fist with which Orbán and his allies sort of censor and rule the national media. And they said, we're doing this because this is they believe in democracy, they believe in the fight. And it was so inspiring. I think for a jaded, Fourth Estater from the US, it's what the fuck are we complaining about? First of all, our institutions still remain strong. There's so much of an appetite for information. Donald Trump has not shut down the White House briefings as yet, even if One American News Network is getting a front row seat. There's still...
just before we got on, there was a weird briefing video of a Draco Malfoy type character asking Carolyn Levitt about how she's such a good mother.
Oh my God.
I did have a moment. I was like, is this a real video? Or am I getting AI'd? Am I getting spoofed? But that was real. So, there's some baby steps, but we got a ways to go.
We do. And it's all the more reason. It's go through the looking glass, go to Hungary and see the people who've been doing it and continue to do it at the risk of their, at great peril. Yeah. And the audience that still wants it, the information is essential. And I came back exhilarated by, first of all, the privilege that we have in the US and the opportunity we have to still fight, the encroachment of autocracy in a real way.
Yeah, I love that. What about the actual protesters? Because again, and this is something everybody's kind of thinking about here, right? And you're seeing people like, oh, I don't know, is it dangerous to go out to these things, to
Yeah, fuck
travel,
that.
to
I mean, I
speak out,
just
right? And
like,
like, so talk about what you heard
if
from the
we're
people there.
scared, then everyone else is fucked, right?
Yeah.
Like, so these guys were supposed to have, they've been marching across this bridge, the Elizabeth Bridge, and the Orbán government was like, oh, it's Tuesday, you're going to try and do this again. We're not going to give you the permit. So instead of marching across the bridge, they start jaywalking across the street. And then the cops are like, yeah, we're going to arrive. There's like hundreds of riot police there with helmets and tear gas. And they're like, you can't jaywalk across the street. So they have this purple smoke bomb. It's like a smoke candle that the leader of the opposition uses to signal to everybody it's time to move. So they walk literally hundreds, if not thousands of people across town to a different bridge. And they cross that bridge and they sit on the bridge and they're there and the police come up and eventually they have to be moved, but they get it done. You know, like the sense of tenacity and I don't want to say this the wrong way, but there is a joy in their resistance that seems real absent in ours, right?
Yeah.
And I think part of the way you win is by bringing back a zeal and an optimism, maybe even some humor, you know, like there's this sort of very Central European, like dark humor in all of this, right? That they're fighting. It's almost Sisyphean. Sometimes it feels like, but they continue to do it. And I think, I'm not saying that we have to categorize or think of our work as Sisyphean, but like the joy of it, the joy of trying to fight for a better thing is like, we need to bring that back, I think, to the American sort of protest movement and the opposition.
Wow. I love that so much. That's true. And it just gives you such perspective because like you said, there's a 2026 election, but still a way out, like doing this every week.
Yeah,
it's been
man.
happening for a decade and a half. I mean, it's a grind. So like it better be joyful.
Totally.
It's going to be such a fucking grind.
But, and you know this, Tim, the thing that people miss about Trump and those Trump rallies, it's a dark joy, but there's a joy there.
Oh,
it's a church revival.
Yeah.
And like the left needs to find its own sort of spiritual belonging in all of this, some sort of catharsis and joy. And, you know, I think that that's got to power it as much as the anger and the discontent and the rage.
All right, last thing. You've been popping out to other places as well. You weren't just in Hungary. You're here in America. You're down here in Louisiana.
Not always 7 time zone differences. 6.
You know, is there anything that you've heard from people that you've covered that you think people are not like appreciating, like what the impact of it is, or something that's a little undercovered, or maybe something that just moved you in particular? I mean, there's just so much happening. There's been such a, I don't even want to give them credit for shock and awe, but chaos and shock of the first 100 days. I just wonder if there's any other thing that really jumps out at you.
Well, I'm like sad that this is the end of my 100-day experiment in the sense that, God, there's so much more work to be done. I think we as media have really failed the American people by being so focused on like the Eastern corridor of the United States. Yeah. We don't tell the stories of the human beings who are directly affected by this stuff. And really on both sides of the aisle. Like I was super moved by the story of the cancer survivors and the cancer deaths in Louisiana, your state, and what it means to dismantle environmental justice programs at the EPA and the human cost of that. Likewise, I was fascinated talking to January 6ers who had just gone out of jail, and the sense of renewal and belief and the sort of like waiting army that exists for Trump should he choose to mobilize it. And like, and on the same note, talking to farmers in the center of this whole tariff war who are still, you know, they're still standing with Trump. And I'm not saying that they converted me to like, oh yeah, Trump's really he knows what he's doing. But I think in order for anybody to sort of move this country forward in a real way, that you have to talk to people. You have to listen to what they're saying. You don't have to agree with them. But we as journalists need to do a better job of covering that. And I'm like so grateful in a way. This has been so exhausting. My kids are so angry at me. But like it's been eye-opening, and I hope to you'll be hearing more about my projects in the next coming months, Tim.
All right, good. I hope
Deep
so.
tease.
I just listened to you talk about we could do a whole Louisiana thing. I've just been thinking about the stuff, and we have The migrant detention center here.
Yeah.
You talked about the EPA issues in the Cancer Alley. The Hondurans that
Yes.
were citizens, the Honduran
that
children
state.
that are citizens, they were here.
It's a new Florida.
Yeah. I mean, in every state, you could do the tariff thing. But I've talked a couple of times about a woman I met recently who's got like a tchotchke shop of like tourist stuff that like she's fucked.
Yeah,
like
totally.
You know, like they're a bunch.
Wait, you're saying it's not made in that state, Tim?
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not being made in Louisiana. On the other hand, the shrimpers are thrilled, and the crawfish people.
Oh, I'm
so
sure.
You know, it's a mixed story.
The
but
Lord
there's
giveth,
a lot,
and the Lord taketh away.
You can just look at it. You can see how that all kind of gets lost amid the sort of whatever DC rancor.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's a time and a place for the analysis and the rancor and the that sort of steam valve opening, but that shouldn't be it. And like, we have to better understand what's actually happening in the country, because otherwise you keep getting hit with a tidal wave every 4 years, Well,
if Alex Wagner, you're the best girl. You're
awesome
the best
stuff
guy.
From
Hungary. I'm excited.
I love talking to you.
I'm excited to listen to the full pod, and we'll be seeing you soon.
Thanks, Tim.